Welcome, everyone. This is going to be a good and a fun evening because we've got two really special people with us here tonight. I'm going to say words about them, but we all know them. I watch them every morning. I say that Jon Stewart and Colbert form political public thought late night, and Joe and Mika form American public thought in the mornings. And I do watch you nearly every morning.
Oh, wow.
I want you to know that.
We're sorry.
And I talk to you, and you don't hear me, but I'm talking to you.
You yell at me. Yeah.
Let me say a few words about Mika to begin. We know she's the co-host of the Morning Joe Show, but she's also a best-selling author. Her memoir, All Things at Once, became a New York Times bestseller way back in January of 2010. Her second book, Knowing Your Value, examines the role of women in the workplace, and it reached the #1 New York Times bestseller
and one person
list.
bought it here. Yeah.
But she also writes for Cosmopolitan. She is a mother with 2 daughters, a wonderful husband, and they live in New York City. And we're happy to have you, Mika.
Thank you very much.
And to my right, far to my right, is my former congressional colleague, Joe Scarborough. Joe,
I moved the chair over there if you like. So.
Joe should be very, very proud, and I'm sure you are, of your show. Time Magazine has called it revolutionary, and the New York Times ranked the Morning Joe Show as the top news program of 2008. In April 2011, Joe Scarborough was named to the prestigious Time 100 list among the world's most influential people. And I want to read this, Joe, because I think it says a lot about you. In describing why he was selected, New York City Mayor Mike Bloomberg said, and I quote, "Joe speaks from his mind without fear of favor because he puts his country before his party. That independence makes Joe Scarborough such a valuable voice in American politics, and that's what makes Morning Joe such a successful show." And so we're very happy to have the two of you here.
Excellent.
And what we're going to do is I'm going to ask a few questions, but most of the time this evening will be devoted to giving you and the audience an opportunity to ask questions, make comments. Now, you two are here for the 100th anniversary of Fenway Park. Fenway Park opened 100 years ago, 5 days after the sinking of the Titanic. It opened when William Howard Taft was President of the United States, and he was an Ohioan. Now, I'm going to begin my question by saying 100 years have passed since the opening of Fenway Park. Reflect upon that, if the two of you will. How has America changed in those 100 years, and how has America remained basically the same over that 100-year period?
It's a great question. I was just talking actually to somebody about. They told me that their mother was born in 1903, and I said, "Well, that's the same year my grandmother was born." I said, "Do you realize that when your mother was born, it took people the same amount of time to get from Rome to Paris as it did the time Christ was born?" I mean, in 1900 years, we made no more progress as a civilization in areas such as transportation. But in the past 100 years, there's just been remarkable change. And it seems sometimes that we're moving at light speed. But how have we stayed the same? Well, I still think, and this is something that Democratic presidents run up against time and again. Bill Clinton certainly ran up against this in 1993 and 1994. President Obama did over the past couple of years. I think there is a independent streak in Americans, this belief in self-reliance, even if it's not, and a skepticism. And I believe because I'm a small government conservative, a healthy skepticism in government. But if you look at how much government's expanded over the past 50, 60 years, as George Will once famously said, we're all sons of FDR now. We're all FDR's children now. So there is this tension. And I think nothing shows this tension better than my favorite poll, not of the past year, but maybe of the past decade, taken of self-identified Tea Party members. And they asked the question, how many of you think Medicare should be reformed? And the answer was 21%.
Yeah.
Right? These people, my people, who have been screaming, I don't want the government involved in health care, say to the federal government, do not touch the largest federal program that causes the greatest challenge over the next 35 to 40 years, Medicare. So that is sort of the creative tension, and you see it too. I mean, when you're campaigning in Ohio, the ultimate swing state, and I was campaigning in Florida, we always heard it, people saying, damn it, why doesn't the government just leave us alone? I said, you know, I agree with you, and we're going to have to make some changes in Social Security and Medicare. What are you talking about? So there's always that tension, and I think that's why it's so challenging to run this country.
So what I think you've said, Joe, is the thing about America that has not changed in the last 100 years is human nature.
Well, human nature.
Because what you've described, I think, is the natural tendency of most of us to try to protect what we think is in our self-interest.
What's in our self-interest? I do believe, though, there is this belief of sort of this frontier spirit that I think a lot of people still believe they embrace, when in fact the reality may be different. I do still think that there's something special about this country that would allow, whether it's Henry Ford to do what Henry Ford did 100 years ago, or Steve Jobs to do what Steve Jobs, or Bill Gates to drop out of Harvard and then go to his dad's garage with about 12 potheads and change the world. Have you seen the picture of them from 1976?
No,
you wouldn't invest a dime. You would not invest a dime in these people. But we are a crazy country, and I think in a lot of bad ways, but also in all the right ways. And whenever I talk to immigrants in New York, and I have a lot of people come, for some reason, a lot of immigrants watch news shows, and they come up and they talk. They believe in the American dream, even if sometimes we don't. They believe they can work hard, they can build a business, and they can make a better life for their children.
Mika, your turn.
Well, I don't mean to be a mood kill, but I do think that the biggest thing that has changed, it's such a broad question, but I think we've sort of lost our moral compass. And I think we used to fight wars together, we used to suffer together, we used to do everything together, and now other people do it for us. And there's a real slice between those who have to pay the price to be in this country and to be a part of it, and those who feel like they can get everything for nothing, and they can get everything instantly, and they don't have to sort of be a part of a team.
Once again, I think you're describing human behavior, but I was watching your show this morning, and I was struck by the fact that you talked on the show this morning so passionately about poor people. Cornel West was there. Tafa Smiley was there. And you were talking this morning about something that you don't hear a lot of politicians talk about, Democrat or Republican, Joe.
Right.
And that's the fact that there's a group. Yeah, there's a part of the American population that is poor, that is not doing well. And we hear a lot of talk about the middle class. And when I was governor, I talked mostly about the middle class. Looking back over my 4 years, I regret the fact that I didn't talk more about the neediest among us. Right. And there's a lot of need in our country today.
We know how many people who have a son or a daughter in Afghanistan. How many here know somebody who's fighting in Afghanistan? Good good amount. We usually don't get any hands up.
That's one of the, we've
Yeah.
asked probably 400, 500 crowds over the past 5 years.
Sometimes we'll get no hands.
That's the most hands I've seen.
Yeah. How many of you have a family member? A little bit less, yeah. And that, to me, is one way of looking at, there's really not the shared sacrifice that I think we need to actually continue to grow. And we're talking about how to grow. We believe in ourselves. That's the one thing that definitely has stayed the same, the pride and the hope that Joe talks about in the American dream. But the shared sacrifice isn't there. And I know one thing we agree on, because we were talking about this the other day, is I feel there should be some sort of service work that young people do when they turn 18.
Well, let me ask this, and I was talking to some of my students a few days ago about this. Do we think our foreign policy, especially our decisions regarding going to war and so on, would be affected if we had a draft in this country?
Absolutely.
And if so...
Yeah.
Oh, my God. Thank you for that softball.
Yeah.
If
Yeah,
we had a
wouldn't
draft,
be
if we had a draft
in
in
a situation like
2003, I still think it's quite possible we would have gone to Iraq, but I will guarantee you we would have been home by the end of 2004 after they found out there were no weapons of mass destruction, because Americans would say, you know what? When I thought he was developing a bomb, okay, we all share the sacrifice. But now home. Afghanistan, we've been saying on our show, and if you watch, you know, we've been saying on our show for 5 years, this war is unwinnable. And the only question is, which politician is going to have the guts to say, you know what, I'm going to bring the troops home on my watch. When this president was talking about tripling the number of troops, we were saying he shouldn't do it. And we were saying he shouldn't do it because it doesn't matter whether we leave Afghanistan in 2012 or 2022 or 2032. The bottom line is no dynamics change other than the fact we're spending $2 billion a week propping up Karzai and rebuilding a country that was never really built in the first place. While we're cutting education funding, while we're cutting transportation funding, while we're cutting R&D funding, while we're cutting the guts of what our federal government should be doing here at home. And I got to say, again, we've given 400, 500 speeches probably over the past 4 or 5 years. I have never once, except for one unfortunate lady up in New Hampshire last year that stood up to try to defend what we were doing in Afghanistan. I've never had anybody stand up and say, we need to stay in Afghanistan longer. Nobody believes that because it's an unwinnable war.
So, I mean, it bothers me to agree with the two of you that...
Well, it hurts us too.
Hard.
But it bothers me to think that our foreign policy would be dramatically different if we had a draft that included every segment of American society, if every son and daughter of every family was subject to the same risk. That troubles me, and I think it's worth examining. But we're not going to solve that this evening. Can I lighten this up a little bit?
I would love to.
Lighten it up a little bit. I want to ask you a question dealing with a baseball player.
Uh-oh.
Oh, no.
Recently, Zbigneiw made some inflammatory statements saying that he loved Fidel Castro.
No.
Now, these comments have dominated baseball media for some time. He's been rather severely punished.
Yeah.
But you know, not only do baseball players sometimes say inflammatory and outrageous things, occasionally political people do the same.
Right.
Do you think the media tends to take these circumstances and blow them up into...
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
First of all, Hillary Rosen.
No, don't know.
Not an official of the Obama White House. No,
okay.
She's not an official of the Obama White House. She's not an official of the DNC. She's not an official of anything that I can tell is directly or indirectly related to the White House. People say, well, she's been there like 35 times. Guess what? Mika and I have been there 35 times since president. We have. And I would guarantee you we've spent more one-on-one time with the president than Hillary Rosen. But people aren't holding what I say against the president, and they shouldn't hold. I know Hillary. I like Hillary. I know you feel the same way as I do. But, seriously? Hillary Rosen said this, I read on Twitter. And then Ted Nugent said that. He hasn't had a brain since 1976. He forgot the words to cat scratch fever because he did so many drugs in the 70s. I mean, we have this stupid back and forth seesaw. You're like, who cares? It's just it's not relevant to the news at hand. And I know when the Hillary Rosen stuff blew up, we sat there thinking, is media really going to sit here and talk about this for 2 or 3 days? But they did.
Joe, I'm glad that you are not hesitant to express yourself in a candid, straightforward
That's why I'm
manner.
here.
He's actually very subdued this evening.
I am. I'm tired.
Well, one more question, and then we'll be turning to you for questions. News breaks rapidly these days. The personal and the private life of nearly everyone, but especially of political figures, becomes pretty well known rather quickly. Sometimes characteristics of political candidates that are personal in nature, that have perhaps nothing to do with their ability to be a leader and to exercise appropriate political judgment, surfaces. Now, a student submitted this question, and the question was, does the media need to pull back on reporting on the personal lives of politicians? And when I first read that question, I thought, of course they should. And then I thought of John Edwards.
Mm-hmm.
And what's happened there, and that may be a case where the media needed to have reported,
more vigilant,
had been more diligent in exposing wrongdoing.
Well, I mean,
what do you think?
Well, first of all, I think the Justice Department needs to leave John Edwards alone. I think we have more important things to do than prosecute this case when his children and his family have suffered enough. Secondly, I really do think that for every John Edwards, there are 1,000 very qualified, very talented American men and women that would like to get into politics but are scared off, not only because of the media, but because of the internet, because of the sort of things that break on Twitter, the lies, the rumors. It's, I got out in 2001. I can't believe how much things have changed over the past decade. People always ask me, what was the best thing about getting out of Congress? It was walking to the street at 6 in the morning, picking up the paper, and going straight to the sports section. And not having to worry about what was being written about me in the front section, what editorial writer said I was a Nazi, what personal attack there was. I say, okay, I can see if the Red Sox won.
That's really interesting because I talked with former Governor Jim Doyle of Wisconsin today.
Yeah, great guy.
And he's a wonderful man. And he said the same thing, Joe. He said, I enjoy getting up and not dreading picking up the paper in front of the door and reading what may be said about me or my administration.
I think we need a vigilant press. I think we need a vigilant populace, an educated populace. But at the same time, I would like to see more of more space around a candidate's personal life, around a candidate's family, simply because we're scaring off some of our best and brightest.
Well, let me say something about Morning Joe, and Mika, ask for your comment here. I think, as a viewer of Morning Joe, that one of the reasons it has been so successful is because it has refrained from that kind of journalism. And I assume that you all make a conscious effort to see that's the case.
We do. And on the previous question, I think children should be off limits. I'm really not sure. The Edwards is a great, example of maybe we should have known more. But as a daughter of a national security advisor when I was very young, I have to say it was very hard to be constantly invaded, and your family can be ravaged by the process of going to Washington and being in the spotlight. And there should be lines. There should be some sort of line of respect. Our show, we like to consider it as sort of an island of sanity and civility in a sea of very shrill voices all over the airwaves, on the internet, on cable, on different networks. And we're really proud of what we've built because there are certain things we just don't do. And they just don't happen. They're not just our philosophy, they're part of what our show is. And people who come on know exactly what they're supposed to do. And if they don't come back. But we don't have that problem a lot because for some reason we found a tone that we've set that when people come on the show, they are laughed off the set if they try and do talking points or BS their way through an answer. And if they get, if civility becomes an issue, they know they're not coming back. And we have set a tone. We'd like to believe that maybe others will follow.
Well, good enough. Now, to the questions and to you, but the rules. You know the rules. We have 4 microphones, one here, one there, and one here. All questioners must identify themselves, okay? Secondly, 1 brief question per person and no speeches. I mean, if you want to offer an opinion, I'll let you do that. And lastly, each question should end with a question mark. So let's begin over here.
Great. Thank you. Is this on? Thank you. I'm Anya Malkov. I'm a policy student here at the Kennedy School in my first year. Big fan of your show, so thank you for being here. This is exciting. My question is, and to what you said, Joe, we're scaring off the best and the brightest from entering public service and entering politics. What I see in that is also 52% of the population are women, and they're less than 17% of Congress. And media certainly plays a role in that, how female politicians and women in general are portrayed. So what, and Mika, I think it's great that you're on the morning shows in the morning. It's good to see a strong woman character up there. But what do you see as the role of the media in making sure that our elected officials really represent the full talent pool of the population, including women?
Mika, do you want to take that one first?
Well, is my mic still on?
You know, some man turned the volume down. That really shocks and stuns me.
Does it work?
Is it on?
Is it working now?
Let me answer that question. I've been thinking about it a lot.
That's good. We're good.
It seems to me, Mika.
We need to obviously get more numbers everywhere, and I think we're gaining. We're obviously I've been very interested in the pay disparity between men and women because of the little problem we had. But I would also say your question needs to be rephrased because I would add to it. I would say, what needs to happen about getting more women in the media and in politics and portraying them in a certain way. Also, women need to portray themselves in a certain way. They need to get in there. They need to get in there. They need to get into the conversation. They need to not be afraid to run for office, to sell themselves, to show what they can bring to the table, because we do bring a lot to the table. But part of the problem is that we're a little nervous about it, and we're conflicted. And I would say a good deal of the problem is that we don't jump in there. We scale back. We think, oh, we're going to have kids, and I'll step back a little bit. No. I think it's Sheryl Sandberg said it best. I mean, she really believes that women actually play themselves, play out their lives about how they'll step back and when they're going to take their feet off the brakes. Put your foot on the gas and get in there. And I think the rest will come because the doors are opening, the glass ceilings are cracking, but now we have to jump in the game and stay in it for quite some time.
You want to?
Yeah, I actually do want to add something because Rush Limbaugh obviously got in the news when he said some really unfortunate comments a few weeks back, and there was once again this back and forth, this ideological back and forth between Republicans and Democrats on Twitter. Well, yes, Rush Limbaugh said this, but Bill Maher said that, and it seems to me that women need to seek out misogyny wherever it is, even if it looks like it's coming from your own side, because while people on the left may loathe Sarah Palin and may loathe Michelle Bachmann when they're called extraordinarily bad words, derogatory words, all women need to speak out. And it's the same goes with when a Rush Limbaugh or Glenn Beck says something derogatory about a woman. You know, we have seen it. I saw it in Congress. We've seen it in the media. I saw it in law firms. Women are just held to a higher standard, a tougher standard. Women are forced to walk through minefield every day. And Mika and I have seen this every day at NBC. And she saw it at CBS, where a man can do certain things and they're seen as very positive. I go kick down the door of the president of the network. I scream and yell, and I demand justice, and it's like, hey, man, Scarborough, he's tough. Mika tried to, she said, I'm going to be Joe. I'm going to try to be Joe. How did that turn out, Mika?
Not well.
Not well.
Awkward.
The president of the network called me up. He's like, man, she's crazy, dude. She's crazy. And so it's just,
She didn't know
tough.
he said that, huh?
No, she knew that. One other thing, though, that Mika, and she talks about it in her book, and this is extraordinary. It sounds pat, but this is the truth. And I have seen it in Congress. I've seen it in media. I've seen it in law firms. Women need to stand shoulder to shoulder. They don't do that. They play off of each other. They figure out what women's weaknesses are, and they use them against other women. And Mika can tell you that. Talk about how that happened at NBC, how women prey on other women's weaknesses to keep them.
Yeah, that happens because, and this is again how we portray ourselves being so important. 70%, by the way, I learned this last week at the White House, 70% of the valedictorians last year were women. Wow. Okay? You know, it's obvious we're smarter. It's obvious.
If you watch Morning Joe every morning, you know that. I mean,
And
come on, that's
yet
easy.
we're so cluttered. We're thinking, oh, we're going to have kids, and I shouldn't. And we clutter our brains, and we don't have any clarity moving forward and staying in the game and fighting for something. And I do think, just to kind of get in the weeds a little bit, Joe's brought up an important point that we do sort of undermine each other along the way and play into each other's weaknesses because women worry about things that men don't, like being liked. We worry about this.
See, and I don't.
And it doesn't matter. It just doesn't. But we worry about it. It clutters us. And I was trying to get a raise because he was making 14 times more than me. And
but who's counting?
Fix that. And it was a woman who pulled me aside and said, you know what, you really shouldn't ask for this raise. It's a bad time for the company. You should feel bad about that. And people aren't going to like you. People are going to start thinking you're a problem.
And how did you respond to that?
What should I have done?
No, what did
what
you
would
do?
you have said?
Well, see, so
Two words.
So yeah, well, and I use those 2 words. So Mika comes back to the office.
Those words.
And we're both fighting together to get her a raise. For the one person that clapped in the back and read the book, you know what happened. So we're fighting to get the raise. I said, what happened? What happened? And Mika's like, she said that people wouldn't like me.
Okay, now I'm embarrassed.
And I was like, they're not supposed to like you. They're supposed to fear you. They're supposed to think that you're going to burn their house to the ground and salt the earth so nothing ever grows back again. And then they will sit down and negotiate with you. And she goes, okay, I'll try that. That didn't work either, did it?
They do fear me now. And you know
They
what?
don't like their home.
This was an incredible process because I went through, please save your time, young women in the room. Save your time. Don't take 20 years to get this. It does not matter if they like you. And here's where we do need to be like men. And again, it's how we portray ourselves and get in the game. It is fine if people don't like you. They need to respect you. And you need to command that respect. And trust me, if you have a bad moment with someone, you can reset that. You can move on. You can move beyond it. You know why? Because chances are those people will be men, and they don't remember anything. So you're fine. Don't worry about things that are not needed to be worried about, like being liked. And it's actually the most important piece of advice I've ever learned in life and in my business, which is one of like a high stress example of any industry out there. And it has been so valuable. Do they like me?
No.
No. I'm doing good. So it is really, just because your question portrayed women as victims. And I think it's time that we take part of this on ourselves because so many women before us have blazed an incredible trail.
Okay, wonderful question, and thank you for the answers. Let's go to this young man right up here.
Thanks, Governor. My name is Paul LaRue. I'm a sophomore at Harvard College. I'm also a big fan of the show. It's a little early for our hours, but when I'm home. So I spend a lot of time here at the Institute of Politics, which is all about inspiring people my age to pursue careers in politics and public service. And we all come in as freshmen and sophomores, and we've got a lot of fire in our belly, and we're ready to, go make a difference in the world. And then by the end of senior year, for a lot of us, we realize that life has needs, and sort of, make money or figure out, how we're going to go to grad school or law school or med school or whatever the thing is. And what would your advice be to people who are 21 and 22, graduating from Harvard, coming out of the Institute of Politics, to immediately make a difference in politics and public service?
Joe, you want to take that one?
Well, I mean, to immediately make a difference, whatever you do, whether you go to law school or medical school, you get involved in campaigns. I went to law school, absolutely loved politics, went to law school. I stayed involved and decided to run for Congress at an early age. But I would encourage you, I would strongly encourage you, despite the fact right now Congress has the same approval rating as Hugo Chavez, 9%. And I really don't know who those 9% are. I know who the 9% are who support Chavez. They are Mika's friends. But I don't know the 9% that like Congress. But the years I spent in Congress, I mean, listen, I got a great life. I'm making lots of money. I didn't come from a family with any money. Tomorrow I'm going to be sitting on the field at Fenway, hanging out with stars, baseball stars. I mean, seriously, it's stupid what a great life I have. And yet, nothing I've ever done has ever compared to being a member of Congress and waking up in the morning and going to work at 6:30 in the morning and realizing that I got to work till 11 o'clock at night on things that matter the most to me. And the first time I figured out, because I went in 94 and, we were big ideological battle, class of 94, Newt, contract with America, all that. But I figured out about a year in that while that was great and we were fighting to balance the budget and we were fighting to do a lot of other things, I realized that I could pick up the phone and call a bureaucrat that was pushing around somebody in my district, and I could make a difference. I could scare the bureaucrat and say, listen, either give them their check or you're going to get a call from somebody on the Appropriations Committee. And, I'm going to keep calling you and you saw this, Governor, when you were a congressman. This is a little rough, but I was trying to explain this to a new congressman coming in. Forgive me. I hope I don't shock anybody here. But I said, a letter from a congressman on a bureaucrat's desk is like a flaming pile of turd. Now, they may not like you for putting that on their desk, but I guarantee you, they only want to do one thing: get it off their desk. And you just keep piling it on every day until they do. And you know what? Even the IRS, Social Security Administration would do that. You see that you can make a real difference, not just in these big issues, but in individuals' lives. And here's the thing. When I left Congress, I still have people when I fly back home into Pensacola coming up to me, but they never go, "Hey, Congressman, thank you so much for balancing the budget for the first time in a generation. Thank you so much for fighting to keep taxes." They never say that to me. They come up to me and say, "You don't remember this?" And I know you get this all the time. "You don't remember this?" But back in 1995, my grandfather had died, and I was out of the country, and I couldn't get back in because I had a student or whatever. You picked up the phone in the middle of the night, and I got to see my grandfather, get buried, or a check that somebody needed to keep their small business open. I'm telling you, it doesn't pay as well as being an idiot on TV, but it is the most rewarding, greatest job you could ever have. And I will feel blessed, as I'm sure you will, until the day I die, that the people in my district were stupid enough to elect me. Because it's the greatest honor.
And Joe, I had those kind of successes with every part of the government except the Office of Management and Budget.
Right.
It seemed as if they were in a whole different universe.
Yeah.
But I think because we've got a lot of questions, and it's time we went to this young woman over here. And
he's trying to politely tell me to make my answer shorter.
Okay.
No.
There we go. You can
Never.
do that.
Just yes, no. She's saying yes. Watch this. I'm going to say yes. Yes or no?
Hi, my name is Gina Hackett. I'm a freshman at the college and looking to go into journalism, but in a time we're told that that's kind of not the best idea. I'm wondering, and this question is asked all the time, but I'm interested particularly to hear you two answer it. What single piece of advice would you give someone right now looking to go into journalism in college? And also likewise, what can we do to sort of preserve the vigilant press that you were talking about?
Okay, I know what your answer is, and I agree. So but why do they tell you it's not a good idea?
Because we won't get a job.
That's true.
No, it's not a good idea.
No, it's evolving, and journalists are reinventing themselves and cropping up in different shapes, sizes, and forms all over the place because of the internet and all the different ways to communicate. Having said that, you've always given the best piece of advice on this, so take it.
Oh, writing?
Mm-hmm.
Here's the deal. I had a learning disability, okay? I went to the University of Alabama, and there was a joke. Roll Tide, that's right. We're not good at math. We don't have to be, because usually we only have to count to number 1. But the one thing that I learned down there, and I learned it in a journalism class, I learned how to write a sentence. The thing, since I was 30, I've had people, whether I was in Congress or in TV, from the best institutions in America work for me, and I'm shocked that students coming out can't write a sentence. Don't write a paragraph, okay? I don't need you to write a story or a paragraph. Learn to write a sentence. Learn to communicate. Because let me tell you what, in the world where you're going, if you want to be in journalism, you're going to be carrying your camera. You're going to probably be carrying your, lights. You're going to be editing on your MacBook. And it's still going to come down to the same thing. Can you tell a story that your viewers, whether it's on the internet or on TV, want to see? And if you're good enough at doing that, if you can tell a story, if you can write, if you can communicate, you can get a job in journalism. That it does not matter where media goes in the future. It all comes down to you being able to communicate. And specifically, being able to write. And second thing, be like Tim Russert. Tim Russert didn't go straight into journalism. Tim Russert first worked at, not Cuomo, at Pat Moynihan's Buffalo office. And then he worked on the Hill. He learned to do something else, and then he came into journalism. He came in well-rounded. You want to be able to do more than just read a teleprompter, which we see people that get out of college with a journalism degree and decide to get into broadcasting. All they can do is read a teleprompter. Get life experiences and then go into journalism. It's very rewarding.
Okay, up here, this young man right up there.
Thank you all for being here. My name is Josh. I'm a second-year student here at the Kennedy School studying public policy. I want to ask you a question about the 2012 elections, and in particular, a great dinner table topic, religion and politics, which I know you all talk about on your show because I watch it pretty frequently. In January, the stuff with the contraception drew a lot of attention, especially with the response from the Catholic bishops and such. Recently, we've seen the bishops come out against Paul Ryan's budget. And there's a bit of a nasty back and forth between Speaker Boehner and the bishops and all that. However, the media attention to that thus far has not really been that substantial. I'm curious if you all think that that will pick up in the same way that it was really big around the contraception stuff, and if not, why?
That's a great question. I think the bottom line is contraception and issues involving the Catholic Church's views on sexuality are just more provocative than baseline budgeting. Paul Ryan, CBO numbers versus, and also the question is whether, because this is all about independent Catholics, blue-collar Catholics for the most part, that voted for Reagan twice and voted for Clinton twice, voted for Bush twice, and then voted for President Obama. I'm not exactly sure why it hasn't gotten more press, but I just don't know. I mean, Ted, you're from Ohio. I mean, I don't know that the bishops commenting on Ryan's budget is going to move a lot of those independent voters in Ohio that vote Republican one year and Democratic the next.
I think that's true. I don't know if your answer implies that that there is, or your question implies that sex is more interesting than poverty or human need. I don't know. Can you tell us more about what was behind your question?
I think that the fact that this budget, right, really represents a lot of what the 2010 Republican wave ran on, right? And now you have the Catholic bishops coming out and saying that it's immoral because of what it does to people in poverty. And the social teachings that come out of the Catholic Church, I mean, that's a foundational aspect. That's a central aspect, right, that you find very common pretty much across all Catholics, whereas the views on some of the contraception stuff can really vary, especially in practice.
It's a great point. It's a point I was making this morning when Cornel West and Tavis Smiley was on, when they were on, and I was talking about Matthew 25, which...
You talk about it pretty often on that show.
I talk about it an awful lot because I find it interesting that people in my party that will bring up faith somehow forget the part of the Bible where the disciples say to Jesus Christ, what do we have to do to get to heaven? Now, I'm just thinking, if I'm following Jesus, this is the part of, the red words that you would highlight and circle. Because Jesus is about to tell us what the most important thing is. Like, if you believe in this stuff, why, he's going up on a cross to die. And what does he say? Feed the poor, right? Clothe the naked. Give a cup of water in the Master's name. Visit those in prisons. Do all the things that, well, a lot of people in my party don't like talking about. And you know, you're dead on that if the Catholic bishops are going to get angry about something that's scripturally based, that's a pretty good place to start. And by the way, I love Paul Ryan, and I love the fact that he's willing to take on the debt crisis, but this budget is skewed. And it's skewed for one reason, and one reason only, because Republicans and Democrats are alike are afraid to make the tough choices on Social Security and on Medicare and on defense cuts and on tax reform. So what do? They go after 12% of the budget that disproportionately impact the poor. And why do they do that? Because the poor do not have representation on K Street as much as defense contractors and Medicare and Social Security recipients.
Anything you want to add to that, Mika?
Somebody clap for me over here.
Yes, several people clap for you.
That's very nice of you.
Well, let's go back over here to this young man.
Hi, my name is Danny Hatton. I'm a first-year MPP here at the Kennedy School. And love the show. I'd love to agree with your critique of Wilsonian foreign policy. But as a New Yorker and a Yankees fan, I'm just really curious. Do you really, I want to know just how much you buy into Bobby V's public shaming of Kevin Youkilis. And if you really think this was a good idea.
I love this. Thank you. First of all, how many Red Sox fans do we have here? Okay. All right. So, like me, you were pulling your hair out last September when they were going out and a ground ball comes to them, right? And they go down to get the ball, but they can't get it. Why? Because they got chicken grease on their fingers. Because they're eating fried chicken in between innings and drinking beer. And so Bobby V calls them out, and what does Pedroia says? Well, I guess he just doesn't know how we do things around here. Well, guess what? We don't want him to know how they did things around here because it sucked. They set the record, like the 120-year record for a fall collapse. Yeah. So, Dustin, we don't want you to emulate that. I am glad that Bobby Valentine said what he said about Euclid, saying, you know, he's not trying as hard. These guys get paid millions of dollars, millions and millions of dollars. And what they don't understand, and I'm dead serious about this because I've seen it, and I've seen it because, again, we're talking about blessed. We're friends with owners of the Red Sox. So my friends and family members across the globe know this now. They ask me for tickets. And so I've given people 4 tickets to a Red Sox game. In fact, a doctor out of Pensacola. Oh. And she literally started tearing up. And she said, this is going to be my husband's, birthday present. These tickets are so hard to get. And I think the baseball players forget how hard it is, not only to get the tickets, but for a lot of people in New England, working class people in New England, whose parents and whose grandparents have followed this team, how much it means to them. And for them to be sitting in the dugout, screwing around, not giving their all, that does offend me personally. I mean, Sox won in 04 and 07. Like Dennis Leary said, I'm good. I'm not going to bang my head against the wall anymore in the fall. But I think Bobby Valentine needs to give them hell. I think he needs to tear a page out of Harry Truman's 1948 playbook and give them hell every day. Even if they're doing good, give them hell.
Okay, we are coming close to the end.
No, we got plenty of time. The Sox don't play for another hour or two.
Well, we're going to take 3 more questions. Yours, and yours. And for those of you who haven't been able to answer a question, I apologize. But let's go right up here.
What if I do it quick?
All right, yeah,
we're going to get everybody.
I'll make this
okay.
quick.
If the answers are short enough, we'll get everyone who's currently standing.
Stay there. I swear to God, I'm going to be fast.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
Well,
Right
thanks
up
a lot
here,
for
young
coming,
man.
guys. My name's Tim Fader. I work at the finance office here at the Kennedy School. And my question is, I don't think that it's it's pretty well known that political media, especially on the cable networks, has gotten pretty polarized one way or the other. I think both of you guys, Joe especially being a Republican, being on MSNBC is kind of a rarity. And I was just wondering what your thoughts were, on that and how I guess different you are than the rest of a lot of the shows.
Since the camera's on, I can't really say exactly what I think. I will tell you this, though. I always have people ask me after our show, what news programs do I watch?
Yeah.
I watch the NewsHour.
Yeah.
And maybe BBC and sometimes Al Jazeera in America. And I'm dead serious. I do not watch primetime cable.
Interesting, yeah.
I just don't. Because you know what? I saw Sean Hannity's show in 1995. It's the same today. This stuff, and I know Sean, and he's okay, but I mean, it's so predictable what people are going to say on these polarized channels, and CNN still doesn't know what they want to be when they grow up.
Okay, Mika, I want you to respond as well.
Just really quickly, I think we're at a weird time. We're on cable. It's very ideological on the right and left, depending on who you're watching. And then you've got objective coverage on the network. And I've been on both for 25 years, literally in and out of cable and network, jumping between. And both don't feel completely right. What feels right is our show. And it's because he's right, I'm left. But we're both very honest about where we came from and who we are, who we vote for, what our worldviews are. And then you trust us to try our best to be honest and fair and to work through things, knowing where we're coming from. Yeah. And on network, I always felt like, well, people aren't stupid, are they? Do they think I don't have an opinion? Do they really think I can just go like this and put it in a... And then you do, and you write this stuff, and it's really nothing. What are you really saying? So I think, hopefully our show is blazing a new trail. That's all I would say.
Okay, right over here.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks for coming. My name's Jeremy Martin. I'm a native Floridian and a student over at the business school. My question is does Mitt Romney have a path to victory in the election, and if so, what is it?
Why?
Short answer.
That's why I said what is it?
The fact is that he does, and the fact that a candidate is stiff and awkward and flawed as Mitt Romney has a path to victory shows just how volatile our political process is. I mean, just a couple of quick stats. In 2006, Democrats won the off-year elections by 16, among independents, by 16 percentage points. In 2010, they lost it by 16 percentage points. President Obama is facing a tough re-election. Listen, I didn't agree with so many of his economic policies. I could talk for hours about it, but I won't. But the bottom line is, we are at the end of a 30, 35-year cycle where the average working wage for Americans has declined, globalization's increased, and our economy is undergoing radical changes right now. And I think Americans keep looking for an easy answer every 2 years, and they're not going to get it. So I think Romney can win, but then again, I think Romney's dog would have a shot at winning right now.
Well,
Mika?
I'd like to say no, but I think it's going to be really close.
I am.
Yeah, it just there's a lot. We're not over the hump of the economy, so.
It's going to be Florida and Ohio.
Yeah.
As always.
Okay, right up here, young man.
Hi, my name is Alex. I'm a student at the law school. Mr. Scarborough, in your first answer, you alluded to sort of the Turner frontier thesis, understanding of the American character. And I guess I wonder, in an age of passive media consumption and slacktivism, how do we recover or preserve the positive aspects of that kind of understanding? How do we get people out of the internet comments section and out into society, building solutions beyond politics? And is there a role for media in that sort of endeavor?
I think there may be a role for media in that sort of endeavor. I do think, though, and I was talking to Jack Jacobs this morning, Mika, Colonel Jack Jacobs, who teaches up at West Point. He says it's the sharpest class that he's seen in 30 years. up there. I think there are a lot of hopeful signs. I do think, though, that males from the age of 20 to 35, nothing personal for you guys here, you look at some of the statistics, it's very, very concerning. You talked about a draft before. Tell you what, not 2 years of a draft, but even 6 months of public service from people after they graduate from high school. 6 months. It's not going to cost us trillions of dollars, but it will do something that we haven't had since we got rid of the draft. And that is for every man and woman, as they move forward beyond the 6 months of service, whether it's in the military or whether it's in America's inner cities, it gives everybody a shared experience. A shared experience that brings us together as a country. It also, as Colonel Jacobs says, saves $5 billion a year for the United States military, who will not be like doing all these stupid commercials of swords slaying dragons and turning into Marine whatever, because they'll be able to pick the best and the brightest among them that are there. I really do believe that. I believe that we're going to have some sort of service for people in between high school and college, and instead of 2 years, even 6 months would make a big difference.
I couldn't agree more. Like a shared American experience.
The shared American experience. We've agreed on something here. Okay, now I think a couple of people have gotten up since I said everyone's standing, but let's try to keep the answers to like no more than a minute, and we'll get through. And if anyone else stands up, I'm not going to recognize you, okay? This guy in the blue shirt.
Rapid fire.
Rapid
Hi,
fire.
my name is Caesar, and I'm a junior here at the college, and I'm a huge fan of your show. Just had to let you know I watch it every morning. Well, later on because I don't have time in the morning, but I guess my question was, I'm wearing the blue today because I'm a huge Cubbies fan. So this is the year.
Yeah.
And so I'm always used to going for the underdog. And so my is in baseball, you have the wild card who have a chance to get into for the ultimate prize. So what was your take on Americans elect this year? Do you think they could be a wild card shot at all or have an influence?
Well, it depends who gets in there. I'm telling you, and John Meacham always talks about this, the two parties have had a 150-year duopoly on American politics. That's going to change. We're going to elect an independent president, I think, in the next, how many seconds do I have?
You've just wasted 15.
Okay. I think we're going to elect an independent president in the next decade. And I think that for two reasons. One, because you can organize on the internet, and two, because you can raise a lot of money on the internet. And when somebody comes out with an exciting, unifying message, I think Americans are hungry, and Americans elect will be
Very good.
a good way to do it.
Okay, let's see. Let's go up here. You remain standing. We'll get back to you.
Hi, my name's Claire Daly. I'm a sophomore at the college. I'm from Mobile, Alabama, so roll tide. Love Pensacola. I was wondering, being from such a small town, and Pensacola as well, there is this sort of bubble that kind of forms around different pockets of Middle America. And what do you see as the media's job to kind of burst that bubble, and also like going along with voter apathy, like increasing voter participation in the next election?
Yeah.
Mika, why don't you take this one?
Such a great question. I'll handle the media part of it. We need to find, I'm good. We need to find reporters with different worldviews from different parts of the country, and we should be recruiting from University of Alabama and from places all over the country, and finding reporters and different worldviews and bringing them into the networks, and we should be recruiting them actively. It's very liberal.
It is very liberal.
In the
and I'll tell you, those bubbles, it's not just people in small, sleepy southern towns that live in bubbles. Meek and I can tell you, it's people that live where we live that live in bubbles, on the Upper West Side or in Bronxville or wherever, Westchester County or in Connecticut.
You're not implying that people in Cambridge live in a bubble.
Not at all.
No.
You all are open-minded. And but when you talk about you talk about the media, let's talk about diversity in the media, because we're always talking about diversity in the media. You know who we need more in the media? We need more people that served in the military.
Yeah.
We need more people that went to community colleges. We need more cops, people that have worked on the street as police officers in the media. We need more nurses in the media. I talked about this lady that, I mean, we need people that, when everybody said, because this is what I found at MSNBC and even at NBC News, I was only Republican there for a very long time.
He's definitely out of time.
And if there are 30 people in a room that are talking and they go way off from where people are milling, it doesn't take 15 people to steer them back. It just takes one person to pet back laughing. Going, are you kidding me? You think that's how Americans think? And they slap back. It's the same thing with the media. Again, if you have somebody talking about healthcare reform and a nurse is there going, oh, really? Oh, really? Why don't you walk around the hospital that I walked around at night and come back and give me that idea? I mean, that's the sort of diversity we need to pop the bubble. Yeah.
Joe, before I went to Congress, I worked in the maximum security prison.
Okay.
Oh, see?
And when we sat there in the chamber and they were debating the crime bill and talking about whether or not TVs ought to be in prisons and certain exercise equipment, I thought to myself, these people have no idea what they're talking about because they haven't been there. Okay, 2 more questions and 2 short answers. Yes, sir.
All right, hello. My name is Kurt Kaletka. I'm an English as a second language teacher in one of the local high schools. And I was raised in western Pennsylvania, Tom Ridge's old district, where whom I actually voted for, was taught to split my ticket. And I actually did that in 1994. Voted for Ridge for governor and voted for Wofford for Senate. And it doesn't seem like that's even possible anymore. It feels like only one of the parties has done this. And I mean, talk me down. Maybe I'm crazy, but I mean, you look at people who've been driven out of the Republican Party like Jim Jeffords, Bob Bennett, and what's his name right now? Orrin Hatch is on the brink of being driven out. It feels like there's an ideological purification that's going on to the Republican Party, not so much the Democratic Party. But is it? Am I just missing it? I mean,
no, you're not missing it.
Yes, you're missing it.
No, you're not missing it.
Yes, you are missing it.
Joe, think about it. Think about his question in terms of who, for example, chose to run for president and who didn't, who stayed home.
Right.
It is kind of sad.
First of all, you're teaching English as a second language. Let me just say,
I'm
Mr. George W. Bush.
Oh.
So anyway, I can say that as a Republican. Listen, I am distressed. I'm a very conservative guy, really conservative guy. And I have a lot of people coming up to me going, you know, I used to vote for Republicans when they were like you. You're a moderate. I said, no, I'm not really conservative. But I think my party has become radical in many respects. In many respects. Now, it's not like the Democrats aren't going through a purification process themselves. Ask Joe Lieberman. He'll tell you that they were. Ask Bob Kerrey. Bob Kerrey, American war hero who left part of himself on the battlefield in Vietnam. He's catching a lot of abuse for trying to win a seat for Democrats in Nebraska. So I think you have this division. But on the national level, there's no doubt, especially in the primary process, the Republicans have put forward a lot of people that would not have been serious contenders even 10 years ago.
Okay, the last question, right over here.
Okay, my name is Sean Polk. I'm a federal IT manager out of Washington, D.C. I'm up here for the Senior Executive Fellow program. I live in Prince George County, Maryland, right outside of the District of Columbia. And Mika, I want to thank you. First of all, you're the only woman my wife lets me watch every day besides her. She always says, you're going to catch Mika. So I appreciate everything you do. Matter of fact, when you're not on there, I don't watch Joe that much.
No.
But
you're a smart man.
Oh, Joe.
You are a smart man here at Harvard.
But, Joe, my question is to you. You're a small government conservative. I'm a government employee.
Right.
Okay. Mitt Romney said people are corporations. They're actually not.
Right.
People are government. Okay. 60% of my county are government employees.
Mm-hmm.
But yet the nation has held our pay. We don't get promotions as normal. We normally get the increases based upon standard of living. So help me understand. Help me like you. Explain to me how as a small...
That's just not going to happen.
as a small government conservative, and again, I am a government worker, because every time I hear small government conservative, I think we think the government's too big, but the government is people. And help me not lose my job if I follow you.
In 1 minute.
Okay.
Well, first of all,
You can do that.
what agency do you work for?
It's a
And I'll
small
tell you whether you
agency.
keep your job or not.
No, it's a small agency called Court Services and Offender Supervision Agency. Our responsibility is to monitor D.C.'s parole and probation system. So,
Okay. So let me tell you, when I talk about small government conservative, I'm talking more of government as a percentage
okay.
of our economy. I'd love to see it around 19%. That's where we were actually in the 1990s, when we had a Republican Congress and a Democratic president. We worked together there. And I think that's a pretty good balance. My biggest concern right now, what you do and what government employees do and what government does, I talked about the 12%, which is funded through discretionary domestic spending. It's a pretty small part of the budget.
Mm-hmm.
Now, back in the 90s when I was there and we were trying to balance a budget, we could actually balance a budget by going after that. But right now, and this is what you don't hear from Paul Ryan, it's what you don't hear from Democrats. When I talk about being a small government conservative, I'm talking about trying to figure out a way to bring down how much we spend overall and to spend it wisely. This is going to take more than a minute, but I promise I'll finish it up. And to look at the huge programs. Look at Medicare. Look at Social Security. And figure out how we keep those programs alive for another 30, 40 years. You'll notice I didn't say Medicaid.
Right.
Because anybody that thinks that we're going broke because the poor are getting a free ride in America, they've never been around the poor in America. Right. I'll give you two examples. We've talked about healthcare. Let's talk about education for a second, really quickly. The United States of America spends more money per student than any country on the planet. And yet our public schools are in shambles.
Right.
Now, this isn't a knock at school unions, teachers' unions. This isn't a knock at charter schools. This is just a fact. We've got to figure out how to spend that money more wisely. Same thing with healthcare. The United States spends more money than any country on the planet per person, right? We've got to figure out how to spend that money more wisely. Now listen, I'm not sitting here saying that we can continue spending more and more and more money, but I will tell you this. We're going to have to slow down the rate of growth of Medicare over the next generation. We're going to have to slow down the rate of growth of Social Security. We're going to have to stop being the 911 for the world. We're going to have to cut our defense budget, and we're going to have to cut our commitments across the globe aggressively. We're going to have to reform taxes in a way that creates a more equitable system, and we're going to have to spend our money more wisely. Now, I don't know if that means getting rid of federal employees or not, but I do know it means that we can't maintain the status quo and remain a great country.
Well, with that, I hope you like him, and I
You
know
like-
we
you like
like
me?
him.
Well, I like Mika.
Okay, that's all right.
So let's say thank you to Mika and to Joe.
Thank you, Governor.
Thank you,
We
brother.
appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
It's great.
Thank you
Thank you
so
so
much.
much.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.